All right, good morning, everyone. This is Matt Iben with the Office of CAD and Mapping. We're going to go ahead and get started on today's webinar. And the topic today is on project management, or the project management guide that we're working on. And can someone just throw something in the chat, make sure you guys can hear me?
Yeah, you sound good, Matt.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Yep, good, Matt.
All right, and today's session is being recorded just like all the others, and we'll post that to the wiki page sometime today or tomorrow. These are the next few slides are just kind of the typical slides JD's been using at the beginning of these webinars. This one shows the upcoming training. We have the ORD overview training scheduled for November 2nd and 3rd. And you can enroll in that through the ODOT-Learn, I believe is the title for that. And don't forget, you can find all of our wiki or all of our training information on our wiki page, and the link is at the top of this slide here. It's just the one place where we're using to organize all available content that we create, including these webinars and the statewide user group meetings and all the other various training and topics and recordings that we have. As far as the monthly webinars, obviously today we are September 30th, and this is the project management session. Next month's session, I think in last month's webinar we had mentioned we may be moving the October 28th session for super elevation to due to OTEC. So we just decided to move that up to 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock. And Mark sent out an update this morning. So if you haven't seen that, that should be coming through or show up on your calendar there. And then to finish out the year, November, we have a drainage. And then December is the open topics. And if you have any ideas for things you'd like to see in December, please feel free to send those our way. The bi-monthly open sessions have been canceled for the time being, so we'll update whenever we get those rescheduled or whenever we're able to reschedule those. And the internal CAD user group meeting is scheduled for November 18th. So we'll have a webinar on the 17th and then the internal CAD managers meeting on the 18th. And then upcoming meetings for the CAD user group meeting or the statewide user group meeting, December 2nd will be a live Teams event again. Those have seemed to work out really well. And then as far as 2021, that stuff is still probably all to be determined. Oops. And then I'll turn it over to Eric here, and he's going to kick us off with today's project management.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
That's not a good sign. I'm not hearing any feedback from you guys.
Oh, I can hear you.
I can hear you, Eric.
Yep.
Hello. All right, are you hearing me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, I wasn't sure. How about the PowerPoint? Is that displaying okay? All right, so I've got a few topics I'm going to cover. As Matt mentioned, we're going to talk about the CAD standards training material that we had provided in the past, and that's something that's been requested that we provide a class for that. So there was a training guide for that that we're in the process of updating, so we'll talk about that. And then we're just going to go through some of the main topics that were covered in that training. So for some of you, some of this will be review, and hopefully we can clarify a few things as well. So I'm going to talk about the Create Workset application, some recent changes that JD made to that, and we'll touch on the geographic coordinate systems along with that. We'll take a look at the Create design files and review what it means when we talk about a federated workflow for our base maps. And we'll talk a bit about sheet design files and annotation scale. And then lastly, I'll wrap it up with a little known preference file or a batch file that's out there that can be used to delete your preferences. So starting off just with the training guide status. So this is the guide that we're talking about. There was a project management with the ODOT CADD standards that was prepared back in 2015. And that was in SS3 and SS4. And it was aimed, kind of at newer users to ODOT who were getting into the CADD world and into the CADD standards. So Matt and I have been working on this on and off a little bit. So it's going to be completed here in the next couple of months. And then there'll be plans to have this available in 2021 as a class for those who may be interested in that. So some of the topics that were covered in that guide was just creating the work sets. And as you guys have seen, JD has a Create Workset application. So we wanted to just clarify that when we initially presented the Open Roads training a year or two ago, we talked about creating work sets using the Bentley function that's directly in Open Roads to create a work set. And then after you created that work set, we used to have a startup design file that was used to launch the initial launching place. And when you open that startup file, there was a Visual Basic app that ran. And that Visual Basic app basically finished the Create Workset steps that we couldn't automate through the Bentley process. So that was in the initial training. Some of you may remember that. We have had people ask, hey, where's that startup DGN? So the startup DGN has been removed. It's no longer used now that we're using the Create Workset application. So the Bentley, the ORD Create Workset option should no longer be used. And that startup VBA has been removed as well. So this is what I'm talking about with Create Workset from ORD. We don't want you to be using that function on the opening screen for ORD. So that's definitely not the way we want to proceed using that Create Workset. In ORD itself, you can access the Create Workset application there. It's just a standalone application. It's also in ProjectWise. There's the path for where that application resides in ProjectWise, and if you're outside of ProjectWise, this would be mostly externals, external to ODOT. Not all of them are using ProjectWise, so it's just in the standards applications folder is where you'll find that application. So one of the things that a recent change, JD added the ability to create a connected project when you're creating the work set, and then to add users to that connected project. And there's an option there to come back later and add or modify external users for that connected project. So I'm not going to go through all the functions of this application. What JD has done is updated his online videos for this. So if you want to take a look at the updated videos within ORD on the Ohio DOT workflow, of course, we have the links tab there, and that'll take you to the wiki page that Matt mentioned earlier. And there's the link for that wiki page. And once you get to the wiki page itself, under the custom applications projects is where you'll find the help for the Create Workset application. And as I said, JD updated the videos for this to include some new information on creating that connected project and adding users to projects. So when you're creating a project or a work set, one of the options on that dialog is the option to define the geographic coordinate system. And we wanted to re-emphasize this. So the GCS is used to specify the position of the design contents on the Earth's surface. And then that's used to manage any attachments that are georeferenced attachments and align those with the file. So one of the things that you may not be aware of is in the CAD manual, section 301.5, there is a statement in there that says a GCS shall be appropriately defined for all design files exchanged with the department. So the intent here is that ODOT would like to see that geographic coordinate system defined. And so we just wanted to reemphasize that. We've been seeing some cases come up where there's no geographic coordinate system defined, and then people are attaching some georeferenced TIFs or whatever, and they're not lining up. So that is something that we do want to see, or the department does want to see defined. So if you're not sure about the GCS itself, I guess I'm a slide ahead here, so let me go through this one. So in the Create Workset application, there's 3 options. There's no GCS, and that's typically used for a project that's been mapped to ground. And in that case, you'll have to define a custom geographic coordinate system with that scale factor to scale that from the grid to the ground. So you have an option for no GCS, Ohio North or Ohio South. And when the workset's created, that geographic coordinate system is assigned to the seed files for that workset that are stored in the 990 workset standards seed folder. So then within ORD itself, under the drawing tab, utilities coordinate systems is where you can review the coordinate system information or assign that coordinate system information. So the bottom line here is if you're not sure about this, and when you're creating a workset, you want to communicate with the district survey operations manager before you create that workset. Get the input from them. Is this going to be on the grid? Is it going to be on the ground? Should I be using, the no GCS, and they can assign a coordinate system for the ground coordinates, or am I going to use one of the Ohio North or Ohio South? So we just want to emphasize that that is something that is expected to be done on all the work sets, and then the design files would use the seed file for that work set with that GCS defined. One of the things that a lot of users aren't aware of is once that GCS has been defined, just in the view attributes in MicroStation or ORD, there's an option to enable a background map. So you do have to have a GCS defined for this to work, and it is just using Bing Maps. So I don't know how up to date those maps are, but it's a nice option to have available there just to show a quick background map. And you've got an option to show the street map, a hybrid, or just the aerial mapping. So again, that's just in your view attributes in MicroStation or in ORD. And if there's a geographic coordinate system defined, then you can use this function. It's not available without a GCS defined. So I'm going to shift to creating design files. So a couple things we want to talk about here. Again, in our Ohio DOT workflow is where you'll find that create design files application. And this is good for inside ProjectWise or externals who may not be using ProjectWise. It'll function inside or outside of ProjectWise. And this is set up to facilitate a federated workflow. So by federated workflow, we just, a united federation of design files here that are all going to be tied together through reference attachments. So federated workflow, we're using multiple design files for our project data. And by splitting this stuff up, we just have smaller files. We don't have a huge file with everything in one file that's going to slow down performance. Of course, MicroStation files are single user access, so it's going to allow multiple users to work on the project working in different files. If something does go wrong with a file, you're not going to lose everything. You're just going to have that piece of information that would need to be restored from a backup. So when you're talking about federating the files and where should this information, what file should I be putting the information in? The various base maps are kind of your roadmap for that information. So you're just going to look at the available base maps, and if there's a base map for it, that's typically where that information should be stored. And then of course we use references to tie all this information together. So here's a little video. This is just a short video to give you a few tips using the Create Design Files application. So I'm in the Ohio DOT workflow on the Apps tab, and I'll pick the OHDOT Create Design Files application. So I just wanted to cover a couple basic things. There is a help document for this and a video link here, so I'm not going to go in great detail. But a couple of things, across the top we have the filters, and I want to mention a few of the filters. So each filter corresponds to the item directly below it. The first one is the status of the toggle on-off button. So if I toggle a few of these on, and I'll scroll down and pick a few more, then I can just get a list of only the ones that are toggled on by changing this to on. So it's a nice way just to see what you've got created, and you can create multiple files at the same time before you create the files, and you can review that, turn them on or off as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these off, and as I click off of them, they disappear from the list, and we'll tell it to show all. The next one is the categories, and this one, before I use it, I like to grab the width of the category field and stretch that, and then look at the drop-down list. It makes it easier to read. So this is a multi-select box. So I think the first time users use this, they expect it to be immediately applied. So if I click drainage, it's not applied until I click off of it, and it is a multi-select box. So I could create a couple different, or view a couple different categories and create files for those categories. Or just turn those filters back off, and I'm seeing all the different categories. And the next one is just my file type. So if I only want to see base map files, I can flip that over to base maps and just see those file types below. So as we get into working on our projects and we create these files and we want to federate these files and split our information into multiple files, think of the base maps as your roadmap to how these files should be split up and how the information be federated. If there's a base map for it, you should use that base map for that information. So for example, if I were working on some right-of-way, there's a right-of-way base maps folder type here. I can check that on. And let's say I want to create two files. So it's looking at what I've already got created. I already had a BR001, so it's going to make a 2 and a 3. And maybe this one's going to contain my existing right-of-way. And this one's going to contain my proposed. So that's a way you can split these files up and use a federated approach to put the information in multiple files. So again, if there's a base map type for that, think of this as your roadmap for the work set and where the information should be stored. So I'm not going to go through all the different types here using different subfolders for subconsultants. We're going to defer that to the help for that. I will mention the comments field if you want to add those comments, as I did here. That's helpful in ProjectWise and outside of ProjectWise. And those are just file properties, as all those are. The seed file that's used will default to the seed file for the file type. So these are base maps, so it's going to default to our design seed for those particular base maps. So the last thing I want to mention is just under settings, there is an open last created file. So if I turn that on and it creates these two files, it's going to open the last one it created when it's done processing. So it's just a quick overview of a few tips on how to use this dialog to create files. And again, thinking about a federated approach and splitting our information into multiple files. So I just want to review a couple of the file types. We've seen a little bit of confusion over what should go in the files. So I'm not going to go through every different base map type, but the commonly used file types are survey base map is our field book, our FB file, and that's in the 300 survey base maps folder. And this is going to contain the field survey mapping information, and it could contain the terrain model, just depends on the particular project and whether they decide to make the terrain right there, or sometimes we see people use the FD file for a field digital terrain model and create the terrain model in that file. That's typically done when you've got multiple sources that you're combining together into the terrain. So you'll make that separate FD design file and then combine those terrains together in that file. So in this survey base map, the intention is that this is the survey mapping. So we're not expecting to see alignments or right-of-way or parcels or any of that type of information in the survey field book file. So the alignments should go over in their own files. Right-of-ways and parcels should be contained in right-of-way related files. So the field books, common file. The next one I have is the geometry base map, the BK file, and that one's in the 400 engineering railway base maps folder. The typical recommended convention is one alignment per file. And in training, we usually say if you've got, just a small project with a couple alignments, it's okay to put them in the same file, but the general convention would be one alignment per file. And again, we don't expect to see any other graphics in that file, just the alignments themselves. If you're getting into some modeling, the corridor modeling base map is a KM file. That's also in the 400 engineering railway base maps folder. And again, the general convention is one corridor per file. And depending on the length of the project or the complexity of the project, you may even break up a single corridor for a single road into multiple files. So for example, if I've got a project that has a lot of driveways and got a couple different people working on driveways, we could split that single corridor into different pieces in different design files and then just tie it all together through references. Drainage information should be in the base map, the BD for drainage. Again, 400 engineering, this time under drainage base maps. This one, again, we've seen a little confusion on this. There were some people putting the drainage information in the corridor modeling file, and we're not recommending that. When you use the drainage and utilities software, that creates a utility model in the file, and we like to see that in its own file rather than see that populated in a file with other information. So definitely the drainage information should go in the base map for the drainage. And just a couple more here. Right-of-way, the BR file for the right-of-way, it's under 400 engineering right-of-way base maps. So alignments should be in the geometry file, not in the right-of-way file. So we have seen a little confusion over that. And you may want to split your existing and proposed right-of-way into separate design files. It's probably a good practice to keep that federated or separated. Okay, so talking about sheet design files, this is just a partial screen clip of that Create Design Files application. So difference here we wanted to point out is the seed files. So if I'm creating a sheet file, it should automatically default to the sheet seed for that. And if I'm generating something that's a file that's typically going to be generated by an ORD sheet, I'm going to use the design seed for that. So in this screen capture here, I've got the title sheet checked on, and you can see the seed file over here on the right is the sheet seed, and then the plan and profile sheet. If I'm going to be clipping plan and profile sheets with ORD, we want to use the design seed for that, not the sheet seed. So in this example, I'm using a even number of 300. So anytime if you type in a 000, 100, 200, 300, on a sheet file, it will default to the design seed. If I just typed in 1, it would default to the sheet seed. So that's just something that's built into the application. It assumes if you're using a 000, 100, 200, 300, 400, etc., that this is going to be the container file that will contain the references to build the sheets. One thing that's changed from SS4, SS10 going into ORD in our sheet design file, when you create that file, it only has a sheet model. It does not have a design model. And we have had some users ask about that. And there are cases where the users wanted a design model. And what you need to do is just go ahead and create that design file yourself. It's needed if you need it. And so it's okay to do that if you need that. But by default, that sheet design file will only have a sheet model in that file. The other thing is when you use the Create Design Files application in ORD, it does not automatically place the cell border in there for you. That was something that we had back in the SS4, SS10 version of the Create Design Files application, but you'll need to use the Sheet Cells application, and I think Matt's going to cover that application. When I'm creating sheets, the annotation scale is going to be set, and at least the initial value is set when I'm creating the sheet. So again, here in this example, I've got the title sheet, and over here on the right, you can see the scales. Got a default value of 1 to 1. In general, this is going to default to 1 to 1 if it's something that's not scaled, like a general notes. There's no need to scale that, a summary sheet. If it's something that's plan profile or schematic, it's going to default to a 1 to 20. And I see that there's a 1 to 5 default for typical sections. So you can set this to whatever value you're going to use when you create your sheets. If you're doing a 50 scale plan, you can just change that to 50, and that's going to set the initial value for you. So let's talk a little bit about annotation scale. This sometimes is still a bit of a source of confusion. So I've got a couple of videos just to review some annotation scale things. But just think of annotation scale as a multiplier, and that multiplier is applied to the display of text, dimensions, cells, and custom line styles. So the element size, whenever I place it, it is multiplied by the annotation scale, and that's going to control how large it's displayed in my file. So when I'm placing elements, I always want to use the base scale. So for cells or custom line styles, I always want to use a scale of 1. And for text, our base size is a 0.14 for text and dimensions. And 0.14 was selected because that corresponds to the size of a 10-point font. So I think I have a couple of short videos just to review some annotation options. Let's review our settings when we're placing cells and custom line styles. So I'm in the Open Roads Modeling Workflow in the top left, and I'm on the Drawing tab. And I'll find the Place Cell command in the Placement group. So there's our Place Cell command. And notice over here on the right, my drawing scales, my current annotation scale is set to 1 to 20. Annotation scale lock is toggled on. So let's go ahead and place a cell. And I'm going to use the mailbox proposed. And there's my mailbox floating in my cursor. So just be careful. Make sure you have your scale values set at 1 anytime you're placing cells. And then here's the option to turn on or off the annotation scale lock. So I'm going to go ahead and place that in the file. And now if I change my annotation scale to 1 to 50, we'll see that will resize. So just be careful with your cells, and the scale value should be set to 1, and you should be in good shape if you've got that defined. Now, if we're going to place a linear element, I'm going to come up here to the Geometry tab and use the Line Between Points command. And I'm using in my feature definition toggle bar a roadway proposed fence line feature, and I have that toggled as being the active feature. So I'm going to place the fence line, and it's going to use a custom line style to define the size of the X's along the fence line and the interval between them. So this is going to default to a base scale of 1 multiplied by my annotation scale. So I'll go ahead and place that. So what you want to make sure is in your settings, you have your custom line style scale set to 1 or just turned off. And that's going to be found in the backstage. So if I go to the File button and under Settings, going to my file, here's where I'll find my line style scale settings, or just the line style settings, and one of those is the scale factor. So you just want to make sure this is turned off and leave that turned off. Let the line styles come in at their base scale, and then let your annotation scale control that. So back on my drawing tab, if I change my annotation scale back to 20, we'll see the fence line and the mailbox will rescale appropriately for a plan at that particular scale. And I have a second short video with text and dimensions. Let's review our settings for placing text and dimensions using the annotation scale. So I'm still in my Open Roads Modeling Workflow, and on Drawing Production tab, I can see the Place Text command is available here in the Placement group, but for some reason Bentley did not include the Place Dimensions command here. So I'm going to change my workflow to the Drawing Workflow. In the Drawing Workflow, I'll pick the Annotate tab, and here's my text commands and my dimensioning commands. So I'm going to start with the Place Text command. So in my text editor, I can see a drop-down of styles, and then the font and the size here. What I want to do is select a text style, So in the list, there's a bunch of text styles that start with the word label. These were created to be used with a lot of the Open Roads annotation commands, and we just needed some text styles for different justifications. So that's what these were created for. They really aren't intended for the users to select. What we do have is the legacy text styles that we had in Select Series 2, 3, 4, and 10. So these slanted normal, straight normal, title, title main, title sub, those are the text styles that you should be using. I'm going to use the slanted normal with a line spacing of 0.5. That means the line spacing is half the text height. And when I select that, it's going to go to the font Arial, and it's defaulted my text size to 0.14. So that's the size of the text on paper when it's finished is 0.14, which equates to a 10-point font. So I want to leave that text size alone. I don't want to change that. I'm going to let Annotation Scale take care of the display size of my text. So let's place some text in the file. And just go ahead and put that in here. I got to zoom in a bit. And I'll place a couple lines of text just to illustrate a couple of points. So now when I change my annotation scale, we'll see this resize. So if I go to the Utilities tab, I'll find the annotation scale or the drawing scale settings there. I'm going to change this to 1 to 10, and you'll see it gets smaller. But everything's scaled about the origin of the text. So if I change this to 1 to 50, I'm going to see the text start to overlap. So it's just something to be aware of with text and placing text and annotation scale, that it's all scaled about the origin of the text. Okay, now let's take a look at placing dimension styles as well. So I'll go back to my Annotate tab and pick a dimension element command or just a dimension linear. Let's use that one. In this one, I'm also going to pick a style. So there's a drop-down list of styles. And again, there's a couple here with a prefix of underscore LBL. For leader line with terminator. These two are only used with the Open Roads annotation functions, and those are used just to define the leader line itself. So you shouldn't be using those when you're doing dimensioning. You want to use, again, the legacy dimension styles that correspond to what we had in the previous Select Series software. So I'm going to use the decimal 2 masked slanted dimension style. And that's going to set all the settings for me. So I'm just going to pick a starting point of my dimension, and then a width, and then the height of my witness line. So again, the dimensions, the size of the arrow, the text, it's all going to be annotation scale aware. So back on my Utilities tab, changing my annotation scale to 1 to 10, we'll see that will scale as well. So we just want to give a quick review over that, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, that you shouldn't be setting the sizes. You should let the text styles and dimension styles set the default sizes for you, and then Annotation Scale takes over and does all the rest. Okay, the last thing I want to touch on was just this delete ORD preferences batch file. And you can find this batch file in ProjectWise and the location that I've got there. And those who are external to ProjectWise, it's just under the standards, OHDOT utilities and the utilities folder. What this is going to do is, well, I would suggest you just copy the file to your desktop to run it and run it from there. And it deletes all the preference files for ORD and MicroStation Connect. So we recommend you use this just anytime something odd is happening. There's been times we've been doing some support with users and just something odd's happening, and we'll suggest deleting the preferences. So this batch file will delete the preferences for you. I also recommend using this after we update to a new version of the software. I don't think most people are aware of that, but anytime I have an update to a new version of software, I like to wipe out the preferences and let the software restore the preferences from the defaults. So if you're curious, there's the commands that are run by this batch file. So it's just removing some directories related to MicroStation Connect and Open Roads. And it's also clearing out Power Geopack preferences and some different things for the subsurface utility software as well. So that's out there in the ODOT standards available if you ever need to just clear out the preferences. So that's all I've got. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt and let him go through his content.
Eric, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Stephanie had a question. Where can this be found? Can you go back to that slide? Well, I guess you got to share your screen, but can you go back to where that was?
Where can, I'm sorry, what's the question?
She said, where can this be found? I'm assuming she's referring to the batch file.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me pull that back up. I'll just share this. Give me a second. I got to find my Teams. There we go. There it is. I can just copy that and put it in the chat.
Cool, thank you. And then you mentioned to copy it to your desktop, so you would want to do an export from ProjectWise to get that to your desktop then, an unmanaged export.
Yes, that I didn't check with Jack or Brandon on that, but I'm assuming that running that batch file out of ProjectWise directly is probably not what you want to do, because ProjectWise is going to want to manage that and check that out and all that stuff. So, you know, if someone else who's a little more ProjectWise knowledgeable wants to comment on that, then
I can't say I've tried it.
Yeah.
There's another question here before we go forward from Doug. Why are we using TrueType font, Arial?
Okay, well, that came in really big. I'm not really sure how to address that. We switched to a TrueType font for a few different reasons. The resource fonts that we were using in the past relied on an external resource file. So without that resource file, the files weren't standalone. If you didn't have that old external resource file, fonts wouldn't be displayed properly. So TrueType font's embedded in the file. And Arial was selected just out of the available fonts to choose something that was standard rather than use something custom. I don't know if Mark wants to chime in on that, or.
Yeah, I mean, we had actually tried to take the old fonts and recreate those using a font editor, and we had somebody in our office work on that thing for several weeks, and we just had issues with spacing. The other thing was the symbols, the custom symbols that we have for, like, you know, property line, center line, and things like that. So it just it seemed like it made more sense just to use a standard TrueType font than try to use a custom font that we had been using for years. And then, you know, if there's any type of you know, conversion that needs to be done for between different software packages, you know, TrueType fonts, you know, can be used in AutoCAD. They can also be used in Word, Excel. So if you take something from those applications into, you know, MicroStation or vice versa, you know, the fonts are, you know, kind of all tied together, and it just made more sense to go the TrueType font route. And Arial was selected just because of the way it looked and the spacing that it provided, and it just seemed like that was the kind of the general use scenario for Arial. So that's why it was selected. And then we do have the additional symbols that were also created in conjunction with that, so those can be used as well.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Those were decisions made before my time here. So, okay, so I just wanted to talk about sheet cells, as Eric mentioned. Some of this is probably going to sound a little repetitive because we've presented on some of it in previous webinars. So it's just going to be a high-level overview of what we're presenting in the project management guide that'll be finished up here soon. So the OHDOT standard included 3 major changes to the plan sheet borders, and the biggest of those includes item types replacing tags for the title block information. So an item type or item types are used to store information about elements in the form of properties within the DGN file. So we're attaching these properties to our title block information, which is then used in the sheet border cells. Item types could also be used to attach non-graphical properties to elements that can later be reported on. So you may see or hear of these being used in different ways by other folks or other DOTs. We're not currently using it to report on quantities and things, but it could be done to where we could attach a pay item type to a particular graphical element, like guardrail, for example, and then get reports on those later for quantity estimates. Some of the other changes here was that the title blocks were just simplified to use less parameters, so there weren't so many tags or item types that needed to be maintained, as well as just being updated for a consistent and modernized look for electronic viewing when we're exchanging PDFs. The cells now have interior components, the cells that have interior components are split into two separate cells. So one will have your border or your title block, and then you'll have a separate cell that could be placed for the interior. So for example, your title block would just be that, and just the title block itself, and then maybe for your title sheet, it has a separate interior cell that would be placed. So item type properties can be added when placing the sheet cells using the OHDOT Sheet Cells app, and I'll show a quick demo of that here in a second. And then the properties must be edited through the properties dialog box or within the OHDOT Sheet Manager app. Editing the properties with the regular text editor will just remove the item type association. So I'll show that in the demo as well. And then the item types are associated with the sheet cut line of the border cell itself. If you were to drop this cut line, it would remove the item type properties from the design file altogether. And then the screenshot there just shows selecting the sheet cut line and then the properties information dialog there where you would browse to find the item type information. So we'll take a quick look here. I have a new file I've created for my general notes. When I open the Sheet Cells app, you'll see two dialog boxes appear. The larger window is where I'll pick the border cell that I'm going to want to use, and the smaller will populate with the associated item types for the sheet border that's chosen. If I expand this dialog, I can view the additional column information more clearly. And you'll see or notice that in many cases, the app is actually placing two cells, one for the border and one for the interior. So if you look at some of these other ones here, we have border cell number 2 and interior cross-section grid. This is a change from the V8i or the ODOT CADD standard, and it makes managing the border cells easier. We went from something like over 100 border cells down to about 20, and JD had discussed this more in the July webinar, and we also have some detailed videos on the wiki page. So I just wanted to give a quick overview here. So I'll find the general notes border and double click. The Place Active Cell dialog is now populated with the title block information or the title block item type entries for the sheet. Now I'll toggle on Place at 00 option, and then I'll enter any information I might know at this point. And I'm just going to enter in the PID number and change my sheet title. And then I'll leave the remainder as is and come back to edit those later. Then I'll simply issue a data point in my view, and the border is placed along with the interior cell. In this case, it's the notes columns. And when I zoom in here, you'll see that the PID number was placed as well as the general notes sheet title. The Sheet Cells app also will place the ODOT Zephyr logo within the border. And if you're a consultant reviewing this later, you can modify the application with a configuration variable so that your company logo could be placed there. So later in the plan development process, you're going to want to edit those remaining fields. That can be done a couple different ways. If I select the sheet cut line, you will notice that the properties for this cell are placed in our properties dialog. If we expand the shape item and then the items field here and select on the OHDOT Sheets 1, you will notice that we have the fields for the remaining cells, or for all the cells actually, and then you'll see that the edits that we had made when we placed the sheet. So here I just want to edit my sheet number and my total, and then just indicate that I was the designer here. And again, maybe I don't know who my reviewer is at this point. And as I place those fields will automatically be entered as when I clicked into the next field. So we can watch the designer text change here when I move to the next field. You do not want to try and edit these with a text editor. This will break the association to the item type. So if I just select edit text here, and I select on this designer field and change it to something other than what it was, now I come back and review the properties again, we'll see that the original text that was entered still remains as part of the item type, but what's being displayed on the screen is now just simple text. So we do not want to do that. So for the remainder of this demonstration, I'll just go ahead and undo this to get it back to where we were. The second way to edit these is to use the OHDOT Sheet Manager app. This will allow you to edit one sheet or multiple sheets at once with some help from Excel. Again, there are more detailed videos on the wiki page, and you can review those as needed. So let me open the Sheet Manager application. And I'll adjust my view here so we can see. And then I'll find my general notes sheet that we were just looking at. And now I want to enter in the remaining information that I left blank. Oops. And notice that these fields do not change as I'm typing these in. I have to click the Update Values button here to make these change. I can also edit sheets other than the active file that I have open. So if I were to want to just go ahead and renumber my plan and profile sheets, since while I have this open, I can do that, update the value, move to the next sheet, and continue on. If I wanted to make more than those sort of changes, we can use some of the export to Excel and then import to Excel. So you would export this information to Excel, make the modifications that you would want, and then import them back into Excel. But I'm going to leave it at that for now, and you can review those other videos for editing multiple sheets or bulk edit at your leisure. So next, I wanted to just take a quick look at the cross-references or the cross-referencing app that JD had created. So this will allow you to use the title block item type attributes to create a sheet cross-reference. So for example, in the demo here, you'll see that I'm going to have a note on one plan sheet and I want to reference it to see another plan sheet. So we'll take a look at that here as well. I have the same sheet I created previously and I've added a note. And now I'll go ahead and load the OHDOT cross-reference app. And then I'll select the select text element button and choose my text that I want to add my cross-reference to. And then I'll accept it, and we'll notice that it's populated in our cross-reference application. Now I'll select set up new link. And I'll browse to the file I want to use, and I'm going to use my plan and profile here. And I'll also need to select the model I want to use, and I'm going to select plan 1. And in this example, all of my sheet files are in 1DGN. And then I'll select the property I want to use, and I'll browse the list here, and I'm going to select the sheet number and select OK and OK here again. Now my sheet number, item type to my plan and profile sheet is added to my note. Now, if your sheets get renumbered through the plan development process, you would only need to update the file or files with the cross-references rather than going into manually update each cross-reference. So if I load the Sheet Manager application here, I'll select my plan and profile sheet 1, and let's say, for example, this changes from sheet 7 to sheet 17. So I'll update that here, and my sheet number is changed in my list. I can close this application, and for this example, I'll use update active file. And notice that the sheet number is changed now to sheet 17. There's also some options for bulk update. And I'm not going to cover those today just for the sake of time, but similar to the previous demo you can review those videos and documentations as you wish, and they're all posted on the wiki page. Okay, so now you've gotten through your plan development process and using all the tools and ideas that we've talked about today, and you're ready to.
Matt, real
Yeah.
quick, I hate to kind of stop you there, but Kathy had a question about the cross-reference in the middle, having to put it in the middle of a sentence. She said hers always defaults to the end.
Yeah, it will default to the end, but you can, well, I've had issues trying to actually move the reference, but if you type after it, it should work as well. So if you wanted to cut and paste, I've had issues having to try and cutting and pasting that attribute, but if you continue the sentence after that, I think it should work. Okay, you're welcome. All right, so we've gotten through the plan process, or you might be at stage 1, stage 2, or just some intermediate part of your design and you want to print a set to send to somebody to review or just take a look at. We have the print organizer application. This is not an ODOT custom app, but rather is a default part of MicroStation. So it's just a utility to print and reprint sets of design files or sheet models. It's the same interface and workflows as in V8i. So if you're familiar using that in SS2, SS4, SS10, whatever the case might have been, you'll be familiar with using it with Connect. So you'll save your create, and you'll save a list of files and settings, and then it'll be saved as a pset file. And by default, when you create or use the create workset app that Eric had mentioned earlier, a pset file is created from a seed or a template within the project, and you can find that in the 990 Workset standards plot driver folder. So take a look. Oops. Take a look here at how to add some files and create a PDF here. Maybe. Try that again. As a high-level overview of Print Organizer, we'll look at adding files to Organizer using a pset file and creating a multi-page PDF of the plan set. We'll also take a look at the PDF that is created as a result. So first we'll go to File, then Print, and then select on Print Organizer. Since our projects are have a pset file that's created from a seed or a template when the create workset app is used, we can simply open this pset file, and it'll be located in the 990 Workset standards plot driver folder. So if I look at my folder list from ProjectWise here, I'm in 990's Workset standards, and then in the plot driver folder, and then the pset file will be named with our PID number .pset. So I'll select that file and click open. And this will check that file out of ProjectWise. So if I just browse to Explorer real quick and go to the same folder, You'll notice now I have this file checked out to me. When the P set is open, you'll see a list of folders organized just like how we would organize our organize our sheets in our plan set. So the folders will create a bookmark in the PDF file. You don't have to use them all. You can change them, add them, or remove them as necessary. That's completely up to you. But if a folder is not used or does not contain any files to be plotted, it'll simply be ignored as if it weren't there. That way you can leave folders in, such as the general summary folder. Even though it won't be used for stage 1 or 2, it'll still be there when you get to stage 3, and then you can simply add in your general summary files to be plotted then, and not have to recreate that folder later. So now I'll add the files in my project using the Add Files icon, and then selecting Add. And I'm just going to add all of the sheets in my roadway sheets folder. And I can just select them all at once. And I do want to go ahead and just remove the couple 000 files that are my container files for my plan and profile and for my cross sections. So I can hit add or I can hit OK if I highlight them all. If I hit add, I have the ability to browse to other folders and also add more files at once. So I'll just do that here. And now I'll click OK. Once you've added all your input files, you'll be prompted for a print style name. By default, the 11 by 17 PDF style is used. So if that's what you want, you really don't have to select a print style at this point, but it doesn't hurt to do that. So you could also select another style at this time, or you can even change these later if need be. So I'm just going to go ahead and select O.PDF 11 by 17. And you'll see the other options that are here as well. So 22 by 34, we can also include it so that level names would be created in the PDF and things like that. So, and then we also at the very bottom have the O.print 11 by 17. So if you wanted to actually print a copy rather than create a PDF, you could do that as well. So I'll click OK to my O.PDF 11 by 17, and then click OK to the Create Print Definitions dialog. Okay, so now that all my files have been added, I did forget to mention that when the files are added, they were added to the folder which you have selected at that time. So I was just in the root of 99901 here. So all my files were added right under that, and they're not sorted by or into the correct folder names just yet. So if you only had a couple files, to add, you may want to make sure you're in there. If you had a bunch, it may be easier to add them all, such as I did here, and then organize them later. Yeah, but before we organize that, we'll take a look. Once those files are added, you'll see that a name is populated here, and it's different from the file name that you might expect. So that name is created by a print definition, and it's using the model description from the sheet model. And that description is set when using the sheet manager by taking the title block information for the sheet title. So here you will see for the plan and profile, which plan and profile is the first line, and then the station from and to is the second line. So it populates that into one name, and then that'll be shown as the bookmark for that sheet in the PDF. Okay, so now that I have all the files here, let me go ahead and organize those by just simply dragging and dropping them. And I'll just start at the top, and I'll move my schematic into the folder, and then move my general notes. And again, same for my plan and profiles, typical sections, cross sections, and my title sheet. And for some of these, you can organize further. For example, for cross sections, we could add that to the mainline folder or to the side road, however we want to organize that. So I'll just leave it as is for now. Now that those are all moved, you'll notice they sort of disappear from this window over here. And if you want to look at the big picture of which files are added to your entire project, you may find this a little difficult to navigate. So what you can do is go to the view pull down and do view all print definitions. So as long as I'm on the root folder, it will show me all of the files that are added in the order that they were added, or the order that they're organized, sorry. And you'll see that the folder name is shown here as well. So you can sort of tell where they're located. But if you also go back to view, we can say show in groups. So it may be easier for you to view those here, and it'll show the folder name and then the sheets that are in each folder. That's sort of how I prefer to look at this view, and I can see everything at once, and I can select all these files and make some other changes or review them as I need to. So now I can also just go ahead and scroll across here, and I can look at all the different fields here, and I can just go to a quick check and see that my scale is correct for the size that I'm using. In this case, 11 by 17, and because our sheets are all basically at a scale of 1 now with the references scaled to fit, because we're in an 11 by 17 sheet, the scale will basically be 2. Whereas in the past, this would have been for a 20 scale sheet, and if we were plotting at 11 by 17, this would have shown up as a 40 scale drawing. So I'm going to stop there with this demo. The training guide will go into more detail on working with the PSET files for things like changing the print style or updating the files later. But for this demo, I'll just stop here, and I'm going to go ahead and create my PDF. And to do that, I'll just click on the print icon. And now I'm prompted for what location to, or my destination folder, where I want to save my PDF file. One thing I do want to check though too is, do I want to print, one thing I want to check is my print range, and do I want to print all the files or just the files that I've selected? So you may find that you have a situation you just want to print your PDF file, or excuse me, your plan and profile sheets. So you could select those in your window and just print those particular sheets instead of printing everything. So here I'll select all, and I do want to submit it as a single print job. I have an option to create separate print jobs where it'll create a PDF for each individual sheet. I just want one PDF, so it'll be a single print job. And now I'll select my destination. And I did go ahead and fix this folder of 000 admin. I fixed this in our configuration. However, I did not fix it in this project. So I just forgot to do that before creating up or setting up this demo. So I'm just going to browse to the correct folder here in project-wise, and I'll set my folder to be the 950 reviews folder, and I'll leave my PDF name as the name of my or my PID number.pdf. And I'm going to toggle on create, or excuse me, open print after creation, and then I'll hit OK. Okay, all of our files have been processed and our PDF was created. And let me go back to the beginning here. And we'll see when we look at our bookmarks, we can see the folder names that we had, and we can collapse those. And we'll also see the sheets that were in each one. So we could click on a bookmark and we could just jump right to that sheet. And you also see that those bookmarks are the same names as what was in our print organizer. So I had this file automatically open for us when it was created. If you didn't toggle that on, you would just have to browse back to ProjectWise and find that file in the destination folder that you selected. So in this case, we selected 950 reviews, and here is our PSET file, or excuse me, here is our PDF file. And when it does open it automatically, it's just going to open it as read only. So you will see the pencil here. So it hasn't actually checked it out to me. It's just kind of opened a temporary copy. If I needed to add some files or insert sheets into that, and I wanted to use Acrobat or Bluebeam to do that, I would need to go ahead and make sure I opened that or check that out as a writable file, and I could do so. So now that we're done reviewing our PDF, we can take a look. If we go back to the Worksets folder and we look at our pset file, we do still have that checked out. We want to make sure that we've gone through the effort to organize this as we want. So we want to go ahead and make sure we hit the save button and save those changes so that we can come back and do that later. The one thing that I guess I wanted to point out here is that when you do close the print organizer dialog, it doesn't really let you know that, hey, what do you want to do with this file? Do you want to check it in, free it, or cancel? So when I do close this, it automatically will go ahead and check that file or that pset file back into ProjectWise for you. So you don't have to remember to do that. Whereas it's slightly different than working with a DGN file. Once you close it, it will prompt you or ask you to check it in. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. There are a lot of other options and settings you can use there. And like I said, you can review those later or let us know if you have questions. And looks like we have one in the chat here. Is there a settings file to print a check file for utilities to print in color? I believe there is one in there. I know there's a plot driver. I don't have a file open at the moment, but I believe there is a print style that you can add or change or update your pset file to use that print style to print those in color. And if there's not, we can certainly add one.
Yeah, I think I think there's one in there for color, but I think what Bob's asking is if we have one specific to just the utility levels, and we do have that on the to-do list to add that just for utilities. So
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have something.
But there is a print driver that can be used, right? Place a fence and then print individual sheets that way.
I believe so. Yes, already. Yeah. Yes.
It's just not in print organizer.
Yes, correct.
Scott says, when changes are made to files, are they updated when the pset is open? So changes like graphics and stuff will automatically be updated when it plots. It basically opens a read-only copy of the file in the background. So any line work that might have been changed or any text that was changed should automatically update when you plot. Any changes to your file, such as like view settings or view attributes, or turning levels on and off, anything that you would require you to do a save settings, you would have to update the files in the pset file. And I didn't cover that just because it takes a little bit extra time, but that'll be discussed in the guide. And I think there's even some other videos already out there for that. All right, you guys, if there's any other questions and you don't want to type them into the chat, you can unmute yourself. Feel free to ask. We'll hang on here for a couple more minutes.
There's a pin table for the utilities. I just linked it in the chat there. So you would use that pin table when you plotted.
Oh, right. I said print driver. Yeah, thanks.
No, that's fine. Yeah, but we were going to add something to the print organizer as well. So.
All right, last call for any other questions here. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and we'll wrap it up for the day. All right, Mark, you have anything else to add before we close? Or Eric, anything else from you?
I do not. I'm good.
All right, thanks everyone for your time today. Feel free to check out the video. We'll post this here hopefully today or if not tomorrow. So